We begin with a story about some newly developed Boston-based technology that will not only save time, but more importantly, it will save lives in the treatment of HIV/AIDS around the world. The Rakai district of Uganda, the location of the first recorded case of HIV in this country, and a place where the disease is still on the rise. In fact, HIV/AIDS remains one of the most pressing public health issues in Africa, affecting more than 23 million people. But there is some good news, thanks to technology developed right here in Boston. This is the Doctari CD4, a small handheld system that is used to monitor the health of people living with HIV/AIDS.
One of the major problems in parts of the world where they just don't have the kinds of resources and infrastructure that we do here in the US is they can't get blood test results very easily because they have to take blood and ship it maybe hundreds of miles away to a major central laboratory. So by making the simple technology like the one Mehmet developed and applying it to this particular test, we can now give test results to patients and clinicians in the same room at the same time in 15 minutes and allow them to make treatment decisions right there on the spot.
What is the Doctari CD4 system? How does it work?
Well, Mehmet can explain the original concept behind the technology, but essentially it's a simple handheld system that provides a test result called a CD4 count. And that's a test we use to monitor people living with HIV infection or AIDS around the world. It's a test we get every 3 months to make sure they're healthy and to know whether to change their medications.
It uses technologies that are called microelectronics, but instead of processing information, it really processes blood. And it processes blood in a way to find these very important cells called CD4 T cells. And the number of these cells determine whether or not you have active HIV/AIDS and then determines whether or not you should treat somebody.
I want to check in and see how things are going there. We're about to bring our test system out to Africa for commercial validation, and we definitely want to come visit you in Uganda and in Rakai. How are things going there right now?
We've really been able to reach a lot of people with life-saving antiretroviral treatment. So it's been a big game changer for us. But the country as a whole is really shifting towards point of care to allow for more decentralized testing so we can start people on antiretrovirals right away when they need them.
Today we're basically running manual capture on
the cartridge there?
Yeah,
Yes.
so basically
The people who work in partners at the top of a giant pyramid, these are some of the most creative, talented people in all of healthcare. And so our mission is to try to unlock their innovations in a way that benefits patients and creates a return for the institution.
That timing is critical.
Yep.
Because you can have an underflow.
Yep.
Right between
Yep.
the valves and
Yep.
the stoppage.
How do you think this is going to help the global landscape on detecting HIV/AIDS?
Well, one of the major problems right now in HIV has been that we can find people and know that they have HIV, but we don't know if they're eligible for treatment. And so a lot of them get lost. In some studies in Africa, they found that 30 to 50% of the people who have HIV get lost to the system because they can't get this test result. And we know what happens to them if they don't get medication, they die.
Like charitable way.
Dr. Toner, how does it make you feel that your technology can do something like that?
Well, I always wanted to be a surgeon, way back. I couldn't make it into the medical school. I was not a good student. So I'm serious.
We're all fortunate that he wasn't a good student.
And I ended up being an engineer, and ultimately at Mass General Hospital, I'm a professor of surgery, but I'm not a surgeon, I'm an engineer. So it makes me very proud and happy.
But we think this is just the start. So right now we're doing this test that's important for HIV disease. But if you remember when we spoke to Steve Reynolds, he mentioned all the other problems that they need help with on diagnostics. So HIV viral load, malaria, non-communicable diseases like heart disease and cancer. It took us 5 years to take a technology out of Mehmet's lab and now have it in the hands of people in Uganda, Kenya, and East Africa. We think in an even shorter time frame, we can start developing more tests that can reach those people for all the conditions that we know are still problems there today.
So the sky's the limit?
The sky's the limit.
It is. Sky is the limit.
They didn't speak too much about the technology, but they did talk a little bit about where it might be used. And Believe me, it's actually not that different from what you're doing here. Ours is a little bit more crude, a lot cheaper, but actually in many ways it's actually not that different technologically. It's a bunch of plumbing. It's a fancy word for really tiny plumbing, right? And the kinds of things that you have in macro plumbing, connectors, junctions, pumps, valves, is the same kinds of things that you would want to be developing in the micro level, at the micro level, right? So, so this is not necessarily a toy problem, although the kind of thing we're doing is, it looks more like a toy, but it's not necessarily a toy problem. You may well find a way to accurately cut these things out and glue them up quickly together, and you may well have a real product on your hands, right? Something that could go out anywhere in the world and provide some kind of a diagnostic service. Right? So, first things first, I'm glad you're opening up all your new goodies. How many of you have never seen or used super glue? Now be honest here. Okay, so you're responsible for reading every single word on that little tube there. Okay, here's the thing. Super glue is an insanely good adhesive. Okay, you can put a little drop on your finger and try and snap your fingers will not come off. Okay, so if you get a little bit of super glue on your fingers, wipe it off quickly without trying to spread it around or something like that. So you have a little bit of paper over there, wipe it off real quick, okay? The other thing is, make sure that you're using the cutting mat. We want our surfaces to be protected. I'll get some more scratch paper for you to stick underneath. When you start your gluing, you can make sure that all your pieces are on a sheet of paper. So if it gets stuck to the paper, that's fine. We don't want to spoil the surfaces of our tables. Okay? Please be careful. Please be careful with the X-Acto knives. They're also very sharp. Make sure that you're cutting on the surface. Do not damage the surface of the table. And if you cut off a finger, don't panic. We've got super glue. Okay? A couple tips here. All right. Quick, one last thing, and then I'll let you play. One last thing.
Okay, everybody. Thank you.
You don't need to cut all the lines on these blocks. Okay. So, for example, if you look at the T block, if you really wanted a block that's just a conduit from one end to the other without the T junction, just don't cut it out, right? The other thing is, if you take out the T block square and you cut out the middle channel, you're going to have two rectangles. That they're going to go all over the place, right? So be careful whenever you take the serpentine block and cut the squiggly lines, you're going to get two parts, right? So you want to keep those parts separately. They're not connected next to each other. The third thing is, in order to help you assemble these things, try and keep one of these whole and then glue the half parts on top of that one full part, so you know exactly where the lines go and you can stick it accurately. All right. So the biggest problems you will have is when you start laying up these layers on top of each other, you will essentially you'll have these layers and your fluid might flow into the layers. So you might want to think about putting a bead of super glue along that wall that you create so that it becomes impermeable to water. Okay. All right.
Are we going with 3 layers thick then?
It depends. I think so. Let me give you the pH paper, a sample of the pH paper, and a sample of the filter paper. You will see that neither of those things are very thick, so you might be able to get away with just a 1 layer thick system, but you might want 2 or 3 layers if you want to have larger channels. So this is your filter strip. You can cut it to size. You can, it's very thin.
Are we doing something for the milk then?
Yeah.
What do we use filter paper?
To separate out the milk solids. So if you're measuring pH, you want to measure just the liquid content. You may need it, you may not. You have an option, right? Here, pull like a 4 to 6 inch piece of that. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Pull a 4 or 6 inch layer, a piece of that. That's your pH paper. What do you need? Yeah.
Okay.
That's your pH paper. That's your filter paper. pH paper. Filter paper.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, are we going to have to build something that will interpret the pH paper for us and then give us a result of spoiled recipes?
You'll have essentially a pH sensor at this point, right? That does a little bit of processing, like it filters out the milk a little bit, and then you read the pH. Like if you had this device here.
So we are reading the pH. We don't have to build a contraption that'll read the pH.
No. You will just look at the pH, and then you can build a contraption with your phone, right? Eventually, but we don't have time to do that in one big thing. Yeah. Did you get your filter strips? Yeah. Here's your filter paper, pH paper. Do you have the cutting mat? Filter paper, big part of pH paper. Here's some filter paper and some pH paper.
So are we cutting out like 3 layers of the 3 of these so we can layer on top of each other?
Yes. Well, today you're just trying to figure out how it cuts and stuff like that, So try making a little unit, and then if you want to reserve some components, you can put your name on there and throw them in that envelope.
Did you see the Will, can we trade you guys some scissors?
Good. Precision. Here's some copper. If you wanted to make electrodes, the glue is also conductive, so if you stick one on top of the other, you can remove the backing tape and stick it and it's conductive. Here's some copper.
Well, you can't have a very sure anything ever.
Okay, you can get much.
Yeah, of course. We don't have that.
It's going to be like a hexagon.
Oh man. Yeah, we should make like a
It's going to be a hexagon.
Here's some copper tape. If you wanted to build the electrical electrodes or something like that.
It made of titanium.
What else, sir?
So what's your start? What do you need help on? But conductivity won't because it's mostly water. Or I should say you'll need pretty sophisticated instrumentation to detect the change in conductivity between molten stuff. I had 6, I think, and they're all out. So
Okay. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. You're gonna have to wait. How many pioneers did this go there?
you can think about whatever helps you think. If you think in 2D and then build it up, that's fine. Try and get something 3D done so you know how it blows up.
He's gonna crank. There we go. I think they're gonna.
How did he do it?
What is this?
Yeah, that.
The milk solids. Yeah. So you basically just analyze the water part of it and filter it out. Yeah. It also helps you wick the fluid along.
Oh, so
Right.
Not a hard calcium.
Need a couple minutes. You get all
people are like, oh man, really? This is like, it's not bad. It's not
I'll get all that.
Dwayne Wade. Although to be honest, Miami's offense in the last 4 minutes was on ice. And it worked. That's exactly.
Hold on, wait. Wait, you know what to do? Where's the other normal? Okay, that's right. So I can put that through and then put the normal back on. You got some here. Don't press on it. Okay, be careful with using the super glue. There are two parts. You might, if it's not yet open, unscrew both the parts and then poke a hole with the back of the cap. Right? And then while using, just make sure the nozzle piece is still on it. So what do you have going here? What's just having fun? What's the, do you have a design there? Or?
I was like, lighter.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like, right here. Would you like to cut?
Oh, so it goes in the center and goes out two ways. The filter paper, you can just sandwich it as a layer, and you probably want to have. So one of the things filter paper will help you do is wick fluid quickly along the line. So you can use it as a way to filter, or you can use it just to move fluids around. Fluid won't run very nicely along the plastic, but it will run very nicely along the wick. And then it's not going to be a little sliver of filter paper. It will be kind of a strip that's sandwiched between two pieces of paper. Yeah. Like, especially if you're using the exact dosage. Yeah, it's just to protect the data.
Just put one more there, one more there.
So you need to cut it out and then sandwich it between layers. Yeah, make that good. Turn it so that it's more
Do it again. Just having like a little one. There be something built-in, or is it
yeah, you're gonna pour in this one. You're gonna pour something in because a pH paper-based sensor is not going to be a good continuous monitoring device. So in this case, you're gonna just dip it in and take it out.
Oh yeah,
these things, how do you put on like a well or something over there? Do you have to put an angle, or can you just put something like this, even if it's like a common size?
It's you might want to just slice it straight down.
Like cut it like
this. But if you need a design, draw it up and we can modify it. I just didn't have, I mean, no matter how many components I would have put on there, you would have found out something else. So one way to template that would be use a whole. Are you building it on paper?
Yeah. We're building it on the whole one.
Okay. Okay. Make sure you leave the cap on when you're on doing it.
Why is it hard to get off Oh, they're back here. No, what did he told me to crack?
So what does your design look like? Sorry? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, it's a filter as well as a wick. So No. You're going to compare maybe a filtered versus an unfiltered sample. Basically, the water-soluble part of milk. So milk has some molecules in it, right? You can probably pull those out. Yeah, no, I mean, if you're using, so ideally what you would do is have multiple pH sensitive dyes in there, but right now we just have one. So you want to be able to create some kind of variation in there, right? So you would use a filtration versus non-filtration with the components we have.
Or you are several channels to take each with
Yeah.
Also, Perry Jones, less time to
So you should think about how you're going to incorporate your triggering system in here. How are you going to activate your sensor?
Wait, KD's not a closer?
You can crack it, or you can kind of peel it off. You know, you have some adhesive on it, so you peel it off.
You got a chance to win it. Here you go. Let's go, KD. Oh, you got the crossover and falls over. Turns it.
Oh, do you want to know?
No, he's gonna be the clutch. He's gonna be the hero.
Okay, so you're going to knees onto each other?
And then he crossed over. He fell over. He like all over. And we lost the hit shot.
But then you have to taste the...
Did you talk to any of them about wire?
Yeah, I gave them the bits of copper. I know these guys had an idea about connecting electrodes and looking at voltages or something like that.
Everybody in the league.
Yeah. I think the limiting factor is how fast you can assemble it. So I'm really thinking maybe one of those vinyls cuts through. You should just try to fling this transparency through it and see if it cuts. All it is, it's an X-Acto blade which pivots. So when you're making curves, it kind of follows the curve. And
So do you have access to one?
there's one in the maker lab downstairs, and they're not very expensive, but I doubt that the $200 ones are very good.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but there are like $200 ones that can cut through thicker material. So even if you cut through vinyl, which has got sticky tape on one side, and you just place the vinyl in between these layers, you can probably still get a nice fluidic channel system.
Have you in the maker lab?
No, I just looked at their webpage and seen what they have. Yeah, but it's next door, so there's really no reason. I had a student who was supervising it, so there's really no reason for me to not do it. But
Okay, use the scissors though.
yeah, just cut it down halfway and then trim it out. Because once you cut it out, you're gonna have two halves anyway.
Yeah, anybody that's not named Scott reads the
Now you can just trim out the edges.
Exactly.
You're like floating on a hat like that. Oh my god, I got it.
They're lower odds. They weren't lower odds.
Playing around.
Yeah, I will. Okay, keep playing. Have fun. You have more materials here.
You know what? Just six. Just six. I played this before. We were the only ones. Okay, wait. So. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. So.
You know, the that would be so you know they have the whole just fit right over the blocks. A nice visual. That's what you can do easily. We're not going to do it, but
What about something even simpler, like something like let's say if you had something like wax paper and you were able to fire a laser at it without any toner, so remove the toner cartridge, but let the laser run through and heat up the wax and melt it. So when the wax is melted, it's hydrophilic and it's hydrophobic as the wax is. So you get these channels because of the differential hydrophilicity. You can try. It'll go away for you. There's a sink back there. And there's if you want to go use soap or something, you can go to the bathroom.
Let's make it very simple.
Cutting it out.
What?
There we go. Okay.
And then, I didn't really see it.
Sorry? What's that?
They were saying add the squiggles and not add the squiggles.
What's the purpose of the squiggles besides the aesthetics? Yeah, besides the prettiness. Everything you do must have a function. Right? Because think about how long it takes to manufacture something with squiggles.
Now they
So appreciative the customers will be. They have squiggles in there.
at the doctoral site, they have a few videos where they showed sample it based on how far it goes to the squiggles. That was what they were using for determining to see if I was like.
Okay.
So that was their original
Yeah.
which I thought that was important.
That's cool, yeah. I mean, this squiggle is a very common motif in microfluidics. So it's a very common motif in microfluidics. It's a reaction chamber. It just allows for, because you have laminar flow, so the two fluids actually don't mix into each other very well when they're flowing inside these things. So if you the only mixing you get is because of these molecules sort of diffusing across the boundaries. So if you have a long enough interval where they're exposed to each other, then they'll mix in nicely.
So if you're mixing two things, that's where you want to squiggle.
Right.
But if you're not mixing two
It doesn't make any sense.
So I'm saying that determining the viral
I never really it's really good now. You got it good.
That's one of those ideal things. Places where there's no money in the lab. And then based on the environment, like what way to treat and how to use these systems. We'll have lots of things to talk about.
Yeah.
Usually qualified on.
Yeah, I did some literature survey on this stuff. So the first articles that talked about using transparencies and things like that are all the way back, from 2008. Whiteside's articles. They're from 2008, where they used some of this stuff to build paper fluidics. But I don't think that the education space has been captured yet for these things. Yeah. So one of my friends in Arizona has built a wine quality sensor. So it looks like one of these plovers where you drop a drop and then it spreads in all directions. And it's got a different pH sensitive wine on chip. And then it takes a picture of the whole chip, and you can kind of guess by the different sensitivities of the different components. You can guess whether it's an acidic wine, or sweet wine, or too much alcohol.
Your barrel.
Yeah, and then put a drop.
It makes so much sense.
It's fun.
Yes, it's definitely not. Most people are talking about except like they think that they have to sponsor everything. Yeah, because then the people who they don't sponsor you.
I really don't have a No, I did that. I never did that. I hope that they named Santa. I haven't done that yet. I did my last one in the middle school year.
So just kind of makes it
Oh, why did we choose to That's okay. Oh, put the non-collapse back on. Take this trash.
At least he could walk like Tiago. And make him
Let's face it, I
superstars around us.
Usually those kinds of channels are used for reactions because two fluids don't really mix when you're flowing them into a channel. They sort of stay separate. So they only sort of diffuse across the boundaries of the fluid. So if you inject a red dye and a blue dye, you're not going to get purple right away. So it has to flow like red and blue for a while, and then after a while you get purple. So by starting the fluid and it moves through many twists and turns, you allow for the reaction to happen. You allow more time for that reaction to happen. So in this case, you're not doing a reaction, so you don't need it. But this is a very common motif in the fluidic design. So it's worth knowing what they do.
Do we have any more like these? Like this shape?
Yeah, I'll get you some.
I'll do this thing.
Okay.
Suarez.
It's so painful. I put Suarez.
Yeah, I took Suarez and yesterday.
I wanted to be on every episode.
This one? Oh, yeah. So,
I found
oh, yeah. Oh, you want this? Yeah, we have them too.
I think Neymar.
I think Neymar, based on his good work,
No, but that's possible.
it is kind of good.
Where are you in your development at this point?
We're just cutting links.
Yeah, that's because
Paul, you're done. Paul, cut mine.
that's basically actually.
Why would you do that? It's very stupid. Why would you do that?
Are there apps for making these?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. But you don't need an app. All you need is some PowerPoint line items. And just drop them. I use OmniGraffle, which is my Graffle. It's available only for Mac, so it's a little bit of money. But it makes designing a breeze. And I've done everything. I mean, you can do everything from like laying out floor plans for houses and stuff like that to this kind of stuff to electrical drawing.
That's only.
No, I mean, I just remember how when you put it
There's like 2 games.
I'm guessing it's gonna be.
I think if the manufacturing issue is solved, then you don't really need bricks. You just go in and design the whole thing in one shot.
Yeah. And I think that what they do is, the ideal would be for the manufacturers to just have a template that someone could use to put together what they want right on that machine.
Right. Just explain, this is a well, this is a 600 micron channel, 300 micron channel, or whatever.
That's going to be really hard. They're using the distance to travel for that.
Okay.
Of course, I didn't write it. I thought it
So there's backing tape on it, and the copper peels right off. So if you might want to cut it neatly so that it kind of and then that sticks. So you can, and then you can actually, if you stick one on the other, the glue in between is also. So you can actually cross-wire and you can make connections that way.
Alright, but you know what? I don't know what
Did you play around with the copper yet?
Okay, where are those going to go?
Yeah. What do you want to do with the copper? You guys are 4 people, right? I thought you might be done by now. Get snack, no, kind of make slow work.
This might be easier because it's
Good idea. Remember just
Are you using that to glue stuff on there or what?
yeah, I'm trying to glue down the.
Just use this as your lifting tool.
If you lift this and then you put it on. Oh my
Did you just put that on the cutting mat? Be careful, you'll want to wipe it off once you're done. Right? Good job.
No, she's glued to it.
Yeah, I know. I can tell.
I think you should have to live with that on your finger.
Wait, we don't even have time anymore.
Well, you can rub it off with nail polish remover. Yeah.
She knows it.
Yep.
Oh, I mean,
Oh my god.
Sorry? Sure. Just use the edge of your blade, or yeah, you could use that.
Oh my god. It's okay.
Okay. Oh, this little triangle here?
Maybe that's just they keep like
in this area.
Did you glue up anything yet? Still cutting out? Try gluing. Spend the next few minutes trying to glue and build something. You know how it cuts.
We put our milk here, and then after milk. So we'll have something. So where's the milk?
Yeah, that's enough.
Put down,
How are you doing?
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, so too complex. Okay.
Another thing we just see is just
Okay. Why do you need the serpentine?
the serpentine we're just using is because
After he's
technically this should slow down the liquid.
that was after we're gonna have a
It's just if the chunky density should slow it down to where the chunky stuff will kind of get stuck, but the liquid will pass through. They won't. No, it'll just block it up.
Yeah, you just want a piece of filter paper in that case.
Then you of course know something's wrong with that. Right?
Yeah, but then you have a failed sensor. You never got a chance to do your test at that point.
Okay.
Or you need to have some.
So you're saying if we put filter paper along
Yeah, filter paper will also help wick along that moisture. So you might consider that as
along the surface time?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of work. Right. Yeah. I mean, you'll have to put the filter paper. Yeah. So the filter paper will help you move the fluid along.
And I mean, I guess in the end, it will still filter out a lot more than just
Yeah.
and so then, actually with the filter paper in between each segment.
No, you don't need to. You're just going to sandwich it. So the fluid actually moves through the filter paper in this direction. Not through the
There's a question over here.
Sure.
Does that mean the wire or the metal and how and why you use it?
So if you wanted to use some electrical readout, you wanted to measure the conductivity or the resistance of the solution, then you want to get some wires in there. So yeah. So just get your connections out, and then you can use one of those machines to pass a current through it or read a resistance or something like that.
So you're thinking that they will break the weights then?
Yeah. So you want something like this. If this is your sample chamber or something like that. You can have a piece of copper running in here, a piece of copper running in here, all sandwiched, by the way. That'd be weird. Right? But this copper is exposed to the fluid that flows in this direction. And then you can just measure it here and here. You want a piece of backing tape. You want to cut a strip of backing and put it on the bottom. And use that to slice it.
Oh yeah, this already has a bottom right here.
Right. So, I mean, what you want to really do is design a device that has those inputs. So, and give me that design, so I'll lay it out, and then you can cut out multiple copies of it. Rather than cutting each brick separately, you can just cut out another two pieces. And then, and this is just to give you a sense. So here you have an open channel, you want a closed channel. So if you put another full layer on top, then you'll have a closed channel, and you know how it. So before you close it, I would encourage you to think about putting a bead of super glue along this edge without blocking the panel back. So it seems nice. So you cut out a little bit and place it in here. You can just put it in there.
And so you're saying instead of doing all this individually, you want to just try it?
Yeah, so today, once you get the hang of how it cuts and how it moves, then you can kind of just design one piece, right? And then I'll just stick several copies of that on a piece of paper and print you a copy and give it. So tomorrow you can cut out your device. So in the last half hour, what I'd like you to do is think about what your final design is going to look like, and then sketch it out on paper. Now you know what each brick looks like, what the different components are. If you sketch out the whole device, I can lay it out in that graphics program, and you can build one whole monolithic brick, right? One whole monolithic design. So tomorrow when we come back, you don't have to cut out tiny little bricks and assemble them one by one and then stick them together. We can cut out one whole piece at a time.
So we have our
whatever you want to keep, you can toss it in there. Make sure you put your name on there. Do you want a fresh piece of paper? Okay. Here's a fresh piece of paper. Put your team name on there. Here's a fresh piece of paper for your design. Here's a piece of paper for your design. Put your name on there and draw it out. Think carefully about the design. Whatever I make, you're going to be committed to making that, right? That's fine.
Well, I've been doing something else. So.
Oh, did you give it that? Yeah, that's how you know when he gets down. He's getting hit. And they're not calling it. His shots are missing. If you are check something, it's a foul.
Playing
Do you want me to play arm check? That's fast.
those are head-sided.
Artistic Oh, it's a lot. Sure. So that means we. Okay, so we have the car, so oh wait, no, you have to bring this together.
No, one time we use the filtration and the other we don't. Like just to like.
Oh, I don't cut.
What do you mean?
No, wait, super goes in first.
No, that's just all we have. What we have so
See you. Yes.
After we did that, can you make one of like the square Y ones?
Yes, I can.
That's a lot. What is your question?
I mean, basically what I'm going to do is I'll just take some wells and turn them at 30 degrees and extend those lines and fuse them together. So I won't give you these lines in the middle. I'll just make the channel and then put a block around it. Okay.
So much different than
No, it's more stuff to under than it is to the thing.
it's not recycling. You're wondering what the purpose or using. Oh my god.
Usually they are flow splitters. Sometimes you need to split your flow into two parts, or sometimes you need to take two reagents and combine them.
I don't know why so much super glue is so much.
It just looks cooler.
Probably because you have a
Yeah. You might, you can actually take your sample and split it two ways and do two different reactions, two different pH papers. So I just put it there because one, it looks cool, and two, it gives you some ideas about what's out there.
like a solar
What happened to that? You're committing to build all that, right? Yeah, you're committing to cut it out and build it, and that's your entry for the contest on Friday. And you have pretty good reasons why you're doing it, besides that it looks cool. Other than that, okay, well, that's fair enough.
We took it out after like 2 minutes. Okay, and so this is like
So, I won't give you the lines in the middle, but I'll give you that track, and I'll put it on a rectangular block so you can cut it out. Okay? And we can do it at 30 degrees or at 90 degrees, the way you have it, whichever one you want. So, okay. What's those guys doing there? Okay. 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 Good. Why do you need two chambers there? Why do you need these two chambers? I can, of course, make it one long piece, and you can just cut your filter paper and put the design. Would you prefer that? Yeah, I won't give you the lines in the middle, but I can give you these tracks just for the it'll just be basically this T piece on the rectangular block.
That's like
So you want the 30-degree angle there?
Alright, yes.
Why do you want to win? It looks good. Whatever design you give me, you're committing to build that design. Right? You need a name for it, or at least a name for your team or something.
So just go down here and there.
You want two separate channels?
You can find that one case that charges your phone.
Do you want it to have the 30-30-30 lens?
Well, yeah.
Figure out a way, or I can give you a T-shape. Two channels parallel, and then like a wide here. Yeah, but you can do that. Yeah, right, with a longer piece. Yeah. So just draw it out. I'll make it happen.
And use that all the time. And still want to buy Macs.
Yeah, right?
Some exciting video there.
Yeah, certainly.
It doesn't work.
Oh, plaguing. You know, we're actually designing viruses that do that kind of stuff. Not infect the whole planet, but we're trying to ask the reverse question: what kind of virus do you need if you want to wipe it? Yeah. Which is the same thing as plaguing. So we wrote some simulations because we've actually discovered viruses that kill nematodes, soybean cyst nematodes, and we want to use those viruses to destroy the soybean cyst nematode, which costs the U.S. Midwest about $2 billion a year in yield losses. So we've got 6 viruses that we've discovered, and we're trying to figure out which one will be the one that kills all the nematodes. So do you know a real virus that does that? That infects a lot many more people before it becomes virulent, which means it causes damage to the host. HIV. Do you know virus that spreads very easily, but it's not actually very damaging?
How are we going to connect them all together?
Common code.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There is a trade-off. The more contagious it is, the less damaging it needs to be, or vice versa. Because you still need your host to walk around and spread the germs.
Yeah, I didn't even know. It's okay.
You need a hex block over here, or just a square block is okay? Oh, but for your design tomorrow.
Yeah, it looks cool with the hex.
Okay.
That's a nice variation.
Really hurt.
I found the link where they talk about the
Oh, the count. Yeah.
So anyway, it's not out yet. Neither of us have had a conversation regarding the future and where this is going to go.
Right.
We can at some point.
If you get some data from it, then together with what results they produce, I think is a nice portable. It's certainly worth publishing.
to do that evaluation. More background regarding the
I sent her the scheduling stuff.
I sent her work about doing some of the things I thought and I'm thinking we should having you come up with
And then like you go back to I actually don't want That's so true.
And the other side is like, are these two places literally the same?
Well, you just sent it.